All right. Welcome back. I hope that was some valuable time to connect with folks. As I mentioned before the break, what I'd like to do is building off of what Father Peter has provided for us, the context of the larger university strategy, share a bit about what's going on within the business school. And also somebody made this point to me during the break, which I think is a good one, so I want to put the center directors on notice. I might ask each of them, when I get through this, it would be helpful for others, I think, to hear what's going on in each of our centers, just briefly, which centers we have here and what they are, just to give you my perspective on centers, because at the end of the day, a lot of our advisory council members are here that are adjoined to our centers in some way. And you certainly heard the theme in our video. You heard the theme from Father Peter, and you'll certainly hear it from me, that one of the most important aspects of an academic enterprise are our faculty, right? So it's putting great faculty with great students. And there's a number of ways, frankly, to support faculty. You also heard in the video there the need for support for the research and teaching efforts and for connecting across their areas of expertise with other university colleagues and so forth. Certainly endowed chairs are an important thing. An endowed chair is usually a gift that is given to us, and we're able to use the proceeds from that gift to support the academic, research, scholarly efforts of a particular individual that is in that endowed position. Another very important way for us, and a strategy that we've used fairly aggressively of late, is to establish centers. And although centers might sound like they are a physical place, they're really more of a theoretical place in a lot of ways. What it really is, it's an opportunity for us to coalesce resources around a particular area of expertise, usually aligned with a faculty member or a group of faculty members. So we do have in each of our centers here individuals whose research interest, their area of expertise is in a particular area. It gives us an opportunity for the school to really pursue a variety of things in the teaching area and research that are in that center. So what I'm going to do as I work through my presentation is maybe if each of the center directors would be willing to just make a comment or two about their centers. I think it would be helpful for other people here to know what the various centers are. It's a great opportunity to get in front of this group. It's an important group for the business school, especially so you understand where we're at with our strategic direction. And I want to obviously hone in a bit more on what's going on at the business school within the context, frankly, of the larger business school industry. As is true in all of your industries, you're always thinking about the competition, where you lie amongst the competition, what areas you might have a competitive advantage or not. And I was thinking about the Big East opportunity. We haven't been invited as a business school to play in the Big East. And there's not really a comparable within the business school world. It's not like there's a comparable situation where you're asked to kind of run with the big dogs, right? So in a lot of ways, as I was thinking about the strategic update, for us as a business school, a lot of it really is how are we going to be running with the big dogs? And so I want to use dogs, I guess, as my framework today, if you'll allow me to do that. Just as background, a few of you know that I have been at some other schools prior to coming here to Villanova. And one of the things that is interesting, and I'm a non-academic by background, as the majority of this room is. And so what happened to me, transitioning from my non-academic world into the academic world, I worked at some pretty good business schools, Michigan and UNC and Dartmouth. And I was learning this industry really kind of at the feet of the academic experts. And so it's interesting as you go through that, because I think as a non-academic, you really do have to understand there's a lot of unique characteristics about being in an academic enterprise. And prior to taking this job, I was so intrigued by the dean that I worked for at Tuck, who always talked to me. To him, it was only one thing in terms of strategy. It was like, you just have to get the best research-oriented faculty you could possibly find. And that's how you make a difference in the academic world. And he constantly kind of drilled that in my head. And I have to say, a bit cynical about that, because it's like, well, it's got to be a lot more complicated than that. It can't just be go out and get the best, research-oriented faculty possible. And I think the world maybe has changed. But he always cited for me the example. His background was at Michigan. He was senior associate dean there. He was on the faculty there for 20, 25 years before he went on to Dartmouth. But I was intrigued by a story he always told me, which was that back in the 70s, the Michigan Business School was behind the competition. You know, they were a nice business school, but they weren't in the same breadth of other top business schools. And at the time, the provost at the time at Michigan, a fellow by the name of Harold Shapiro, when he hired their dean in the 70s, a guy by the name of Gil Whitaker, he told Gil Whitaker, you've got to raise the profile of this business school into the same league as the rest of the academic units on campus. And so the story that was told to me was that he just went out and he focused on faculty. That's what he needed to do. So I wanted to understand that story better. So I thought it would be intriguing to go back and talk to Gil Whitaker and talk to the successors of him at Michigan. And I actually looked at other business schools as well. I picked out 4 business schools that were consistently within the top 10. Now this is the rankings, the traditional rankings of business schools have always been around full-time MBA programs. And there were 4 schools that really stood out for me that probably they weren't unknown, but at least as a business school, they were relatively unknown, or certainly not considered amongst the top at the time in the 70s. And that was Duke, the Fuqua School, Columbia, Michigan, and Kellogg. I've got Tuck up there because that was my frame of references as I pursued this. And so I spent probably about 6 to 8 months reaching out to the deans that were in charge of those business schools over that period of time from the 70s up until the year, at that point, 2003, 2004. This was the Business Week rankings, by the way, at that point in time. And Kellogg, as one example, had been consistently ranked number 1. They did a great job. So I went back and talked to Don Jacobs, who was the dean at Kellogg over about a 25, 30-year period. Went to Duke. I talked to a series of deans there, Tom Keller, who was the dean in the 70s, and then his successor deans up until today, Blair Shepard. Columbia Business School, Myron Feldberg was dean, and he had done a remarkable job in terms of the changes they made there. And of course, the Michigan folks that I knew as well. And it was very interesting. I got a lot of confirmation of what I was hearing. I talked to Gil Whitaker at Michigan, and I talked to Tom Keller at Duke. And in both cases, like at the Duke example, it was a small department within one of the buildings at Duke. It wasn't the Fuqua School of Business as you know it today. If any of you have been down there, it's a great business school. There's a lot going for it. It's certainly well known. They've got campuses all over the world. But at the time, it was nothing. And so when I talked to Tom, I said, Tom, how did this whole thing get going? He says, well, it was pretty simple. I went out and I hired, and he cited 2 marketing professors who were nationally renowned. They were well known in their field for the research that they were doing. He says, and that just started it. He says, that attracted the next round and the next round and the next round. And he confirmed, at least through the Duke story, that a lot of it really was centered on kind of this star play. You know, you've got to get phenomenal faculty that know their disciplines, that are respected in their industry, and they in turn attract other faculty, other researchers, and you build momentum that way. It was the same story that I heard at Michigan. Certainly the same story that I heard from the Kellogg School as well. Don Jacobs really pursued a very aggressive strategy, also centered around faculty. So for me as a non-academic, which I know, as I say, a number of you are, it really was, it confirmed a lot that I had seen, at least now having been in this business school industry at that time, maybe 15, 16 years. And so, but it was also interesting as I started to transition into conversations with deans into the 90s, the post-Business Week deans, Joe White at Michigan as an example, some of the deans that took over at Duke as well, they still talked about faculty as being central to your strategy. You have to have these people that really are renowned. So that's the inside baseball side of it. But it was a necessary, very necessary condition, but not sufficient condition any longer. Because once Business Week got on the horizon and other ranking institutions, they really started to factor in things like, well, what are recruiters thinking? You know, what are students thinking? So that element of student satisfaction became very important to the equation as well. And so, at the end of all of this, and I wrote an article about it. In fact, I had a session at a national conference where I had some of these deans up on a panel, and we had a really interesting dialogue about what it takes in the business school industry to be a leading business school. And what, again, a lot of the focus is on this importance of faculty and research and scholarly excellence, but surrounded by other things such as assuring that your recruiters are hiring the types of students you need, a lot more focus on the educational elements that you need, a lot more focus on being a relevant business school and not just rolling out tired stuff from the 50s. For me, it was the education that I received coming into this job, and it really was a very meaningful exercise. And so when I think about this thing about where we want to be as a business school, I put it in the context of running with the big dogs, right? I think that's what we aspire to do. We certainly want to be amongst the very best business schools. And there's examples, certainly the Duke example, and others, where we know it's very achievable over a period of time. This is a tougher industry. It's not like a Google that's going to suddenly arise one day and become, have a huge market share and beat out the competition over a short time. But it's a longer term gain. And so coming to Villanova, and the thing that was so attractive to me about Villanova is that it reminded me of a lot of these other schools in that it had attributes that they had. There was a passion about the school. You had alums that really felt strongly about the place. It had a better, I think, there was a better view of the school than maybe was consistent with some of the resources that were in place. So there were things that you realize, with some effort, we could really push this thing. And probably the most important thing for me is it was very much undervalued in the marketplace, right? So if you're gonna invest in a stock, you want to go after something that has a lot more going for it that people just haven't recognized. And my analysis coming into this was that that's where Villanova was sitting. So early on, we spent a lot of time, many of you know, really trying to push up the reputation, trying to get more external, get the rankings going for us, a lot of media attention and so forth. So we've been really pushing quite hard on that element. But I just want people to understand, and I'm providing this really as context for our strategy and for our strategic thinking, that the long-term play for us is consistent with what I think you heard in the video from some of our very top scholars, people like Jonathan and Quinetta, Mike Pagano, people that understand that it's important for them to become recognized nationally, internationally for their work. We have to support that. So it's not just the classroom. But I also have to tell you another thing that I've learned about this thing as a non-academic, that the strength of that research and scholarly excellence is the thing that really plays out in the classroom. It's the difference between a university and a high school, as they say, is that in high school you're not doing that level of research, right? You're teaching concepts, and in some cases you might be teaching it over and over and over again, year after year. It's important that we stay on the leading edge of knowledge, and so it's important that we support the research. So I think sometimes there's a jaded view of academics. It's like, well, they're doing this esoteric research, and why aren't they teaching 8 or 10 or 12 classes a year? It's because that research really makes a difference back in the classroom, and it's making a difference in the lives of our students. So it's something that we need to understand. The problem with it is it's the most expensive element of all of those things that you could push on. As you know, it's a talent management business. You're in that same business, right? Who are the best people you could hire in your business to succeed? For us, it's the same thing, but it becomes very expensive to pursue that strategy, but for us, this is the way we need to go. So I want people to just give you that background and at least put it in the context of some other business schools. Certainly in the last few years, we've been very proud of things that we have accomplished. Again, we appreciate a lot of support that we've got from our councils in these areas. We have made some very good strides in terms of our faculty recruitment. We have advanced the support that we're providing to our faculty. It's helped us attract people as a result. It's helped us retain people. There clearly were people amongst our faculty that were of interest of other aspirant schools. And so we've done everything we can to assure that they have what they need to be successful here. So for me, that's one of the top things we're very proud of. And also to the point that came up earlier, and I think it was an excellent point, about diversity. We were sharing with some of the big four accounting firms have been in recently talking to us about our diversity efforts. And one of the things that we've pointed out is that of the last 3 years in terms of faculty that we've recruited, the number is in the 30, 40% in terms of a good mix of minority, female faculty as well. So we're very proud also of our recruiting efforts because at the end of the day, the composition is going to turn based on who's in the classroom. You've got to have great faculty that represents the population at large to attract the students. So that's part of our effort that we've really pushed on that quite hard. And we've been very fortunate because just like trying to attract minority students, Everybody is chasing minority students, so you have to have the money in the marketplace to do that. So we've been certainly investing a lot in terms of our faculty recruitment efforts as well. Our application growth, which is kind of running, I think, in parallel with the external reputation that we've gained, has been significant. 5 years ago, where we used to get about 2,200 applications a year to the business school. We did go over 4,000 pre-2008. We've been settling in at about the 3,800 mark, but that's nearly double from where we were. So that's translated into significant uptick in terms of the quality of our students as well. So we've been very pleased with that. That's become evident. You talk to our faculty and you say, do you see it in the classroom? They certainly do. They've been able to raise the bar in the classroom conversation, which in turn translates into better students that we're placing. And we're hearing the same from our recruiters. We did this Wall Street panel here on campus, and for those of you that were here last night and heard Bill Donnell talk about it, he made the observation that the types of students that he saw in the room this year, there were about 300 students, well-dressed, very well, ready for this session. But, more importantly than just looking good, they also were asking some really great questions, and they were well engaged and well prepared. And as Bill and the panelists that I went out to dinner with afterwards commented on, it's been quite a transition over time, and that also plays well for us when we're putting those students out into the marketplace. One of the advantages, too, about the business school that I was fortunate to stumble into is you had faculty that really cared about students, and they cared about teaching. And by that active engagement in the lives of our students, they were concerned to make sure that the curriculum was relevant. So whereas at other places, the first concern is kind of protecting turf and making sure that my life doesn't change too much. So it's much easier for me to teach what I was teaching the way I used to teach it, just leave me alone. At Villanova, really the first concern was, what are we doing for our students? How are we making sure our students are well educated? So having that kind of attitude amongst our faculty has allowed us to do some very innovative things in our curriculum. Our undergrad curriculum, as many of you know, because you've been hearing about this for the last 2 or 3 years, we've made some aggressive changes. We've got team teaching going on. We've got, as we talked earlier today, we've got the one book program. We're doing all kinds of things to assure that the education is relevant, that we're preparing our students for the year 2015 and 2020, not for the year 1955 when it was a manufacturing economy. So that's been a great competitive advantage of ours. So when we're looking at our kind of points of differentiation, points of parity, our faculty certainly gives us that, and it goes back into our long history and tradition of assuring that we have the best faculty and faculty that care about our students. So we've done some very aggressive things. It's given the business school a real nice buzz within the industry. It's like, how did you pull that off? I presented our various curricular changes at a number of conferences over the last couple of years, and I'll go up there and I'll say, well, we're doing this undergrad course where we've got an accountant and a finance person in the classroom at all times teaching this material together. And they're like, how did you convince them to do that? Because we could never pull that off, at our place. And so that, you have a lot of pride in that, and the reason we did that wasn't just to be kind of clever about the way we're teaching, but what we heard from recruiters, what we heard from students, is that it would really be helpful if we could understand these concepts the way they're connected in a better way, instead of in a siloed approach. And what it's forced, especially as we've gone through the first year of that financial management reporting class where we do have accounting and finance together, is it's really pushing our students. The first group that went through this, there was a lot of screaming in the hallways and bloodletting and things like that. But we kept pushing it. It's like we believe we're on the right course here. And yes, it is difficult. And yeah, you might not get an A like you're used to getting unless you really work hard. And so we pushed our students, we raised the bar. I give our faculty a lot of credit for that, because now we're seeing our students, as they're coming through the other end, their ability to think in a more complex way, in a more integrated way, and their ability to really do well when they're going into their internships. We think that we've got them differentiated now, so we're very pleased with that. Certainly rankings across all programs, we've been very aggressive about that. This is a double-edged sword, frankly. We're gonna do well sometimes, or we're not gonna do well sometimes, and it's very serendipitous in terms of the way these different business weeks and Wall Street journals and Financial Times do this. I can tell you that we stay actively engage with them. We understand what they're trying to measure. We work hard at it. Sometimes it's out of our control. You know, the business week thing, we've bounced around from 19 to 11 to 12 to 20. And as I talk to them, a lot of it really has to do with their decisions about who they're going to survey, and then other things that are out of our hands in terms of what people decide to return the surveys. You know, so the last round, we lost a bunch of East Coast responses for whatever reason. Business Week recognized it, and they said, geez, yeah, there was about 5 or 6 schools that really we didn't hear as much from their recruiters for one reason or another. It's not really a reflection, though, that the quality of the education has gone up or down. It was really an indication of how responsive certain people were. So we might have to change the mix of the recruiter names that we give them and really make sure that we've got people that are more responsive. But what really, I mean, and one part of that hurt us is some of the, you know, a lot of the Wall Street folks hire our students, and with some of the mergers and changes that happened, there are people that 2 years ago got the survey, answered it. Villanova's a great school, we recruit there. They weren't in their positions anymore. They didn't get the survey. So a loss of 6 surveys not coming in made a big difference. You know, the difference between probably a 12 ranking and a 20. So we do watch that closely. It's very important to us, and at the same time, we're careful not to make our strategy around rankings. Really, our strategy is built around quality, and you just keep hoping that the quality is reflected in the various rankings that happen out there. Our media recognition has gone up dramatically. I know when we started measuring this, the year 2004, we had about 5 press hits in reasonable magazines or newspapers, whether it's a Wall Street Journal or a New York Times. You know, now we're pretty consistently seeing 300, 400 a year. Part of that, too, is that strategy around faculty expertise. We're trying to make sure that when, whatever it is, Wall Street Journal needs to talk to an expert around, you know, real estate or global business, you know, that they're calling us, that they have our professors up there, because that really is a point of pride for us, and it really pushes that Villanova name out there. So that's become a very important effort for us. And we're also very pleased because at the end of the day, we can't do any of this stuff without having the alumni and the financial support that we've had. And we've had quite a dramatic improvement in terms of the support coming to the school. And I thank you folks for that because so many of you have been an active part of that. So that's another thing that we're really pleased with in terms of what has happened at the business school in the last few years. Just to continue the conversation and things that we want to think about, and we're going to have some time here to engage in a conversation. I wanted to, well, actually, let me step back. I want to underscore, if I could, where we're at with our strategic plan and how that leads into some issues. Just, you heard from Father Peter where the university was at. We also launched into a strategic planning process. We also used folks from McKinsey to get us started in this, and we were lagging the university a bit just so we were linked into what they were doing and following their direction. A number of you were involved in that as well, because we had 3 or 4 groups. We kept changing the composition. At the end of the day, we had about 70-some people involved across faculty, staff, students, alums that helped us work through this process, which took about a year. What's emerged out of this is a vision, and any of you involved in this knows how this goes. There's a lot of wordsmithing, a lot of time spent on something that amounts to, you know, 7 or 8 lines. But you really want to assure that those 7 or 8 lines are saying exactly what's important to you. And you could see from this, from all of our conversation, the types of things that emerge in the conversation. This notion of becoming internationally recognized. So I think there's an understanding here that we've gone from regional recognition to national recognition. It's like, hey, let's make it the world. So we really do want to be seen amongst those top business schools. We want to be amongst the big dogs, so to speak. And the conversation around that too, there's a nuance to that, because being internationally recognized is a little bit different than being a global business school, which is another challenge. You probably know a lot of business schools are getting very aggressive about their global strategy, opening campuses, getting into partnerships. That's one of the things that we're really going to have to confront here at our business school as well. So, but we want to be internationally recognized too. We want people to know who we are, so we're drawn from all over the world when it comes to our faculty and our students. This notion of innovation, we really do think that we're onto something, and for us it's not just one of these words that people throw around, but it is meaningful, that we are able to be innovative in our thinking, and we're able to develop students that are innovative in their thinking as well. Our curricular changes, some of the things that we're doing, underpin our ability to be more flexible and more innovative than others. So that's one thing I think we could push without being resource rich, quite frankly. The new center that they're convening for the first time today, our Center for Innovation, Creativity, and Entrepreneurship. This idea has been being pushed for quite some time. We're going to have that group help us with that, right? How does this translate into action? What kind of things do we need to do programmatically? So innovation is a big thing for us. The relevant approach, certainly another area that we have a lot to be proud of. We have done, this school does a great job of connecting theory with practice. So yes, we do have faculty that are doing deep research in some areas, but we're translating that into the classroom that translates into jobs, right? We need our students to be prepared for their jobs and their career. So last year I think we had the most number of outside speakers that came in and brought that to reality. People that we're very, very proud of having speak with our students. The programs that we're doing here, the One Book program, a number of the things that we're doing in the classroom to translate what they're hearing in the classroom into reality, a lot of action learning projects. Our management marketing class that we have is very focused on that, where students are working on a live case for a company, and then they're forced into a position as sophomores to present to a group of high-level executives. That's a very meaningful program. A couple weeks ago, we had a program here with, I think they were freshmen, right, through our accounting students that were presenting to a group of the Big Four partners, their approach to a particular accounting case that they were analyzing. So it's great to see that happen. So we want to make sure that what we're doing is very relevant. Certainly, given our heritage, the notion of being ethical and a sense of corporate social responsibility is another great fit for us. We've got a great foundation in that. It's something that obviously we believe and that we know is very important. So when things kind of go haywire and you hear these various stories of people that are performing in an unethical way, we really want to be out there saying, listen, our position around this is clear. This is the way you need to behave in your positions. This is the way you need to think as a student. So for us, ethics is going to continue to be underpinned here. Analytical, there's a group here too, one of our centers, business analytics. We've pushed this. We introduced this idea about 3 years ago with the realization that in the business world, a lot of discussion, a lot of movement toward coming up with strategies that were underpinned by market information, right? Understanding the customer inside and out, having data, having information, and then how that then drives decisions that you need to have with your business. We had the CEO of Harris in here. Harris has been particularly aggressive about this notion of business analytics and making decisions based on the knowledge that they had of their customers. That is very detailed and very in-depth, and they pursue certain strategies and marketing strategies and others that are underpinned by that. We want our students to understand that because that's going to be useful for them when they're out there in their positions. We also want them to be, with the type of students coming in, we have an ability to really push the quantitative edge of our students. So we want them to be differentiated on that. That is a very important side for us. So this notion of ethics, analytics, creative, we want our students to be creative problem solvers, all prepared for what we know is a very complex global economy. So I'm really, really pleased with where this vision has come out. It's interesting as you're going through these processes, it's like, oh my God, will this thing end ever? They go on and on. But it's interesting when you kind of go back, you look at it, you realize all of that kind of was for a reason, because out of that emerged a lot of great ideas, and it just helped you kind of hone in on where you needed to go. And so our vision statement is what it is right now, very consistent with the university. We have, we also defined or identified 6 strategic platforms. These are very consistent with some of the words you heard out of Father Peter, very consistent in supporting the university strategy and picking up on a lot of the themes that you'll see in our vision statement. This notion of an innovative curriculum. We want to continue to have that. We really do think that this could be a key point of differentiation for our students coming out of the Villanova School of Business. The personalized approach, that's, again, a hallmark of an education at Villanova and at the business school over the years, has been how we have just really understood the individual. this idea in even your own businesses of, frankly, you got to know the customer, right? For us, we really know the students, and that gives us a competitive advantage. We have small class sizes. We have our faculty in the classroom. We have support that we've put in place with the Clay Center, with the work that our staff does under the direction of Dean German in terms of making sure that our students are taken care of on their professional, their academic, whatever it might be need, so that they really do, as they go through our programs, they understand that we care about them as an individual and we care about where they're going in their career. This notion of world-class faculty, I think I've underscored this enough, although I probably can't do it enough, frankly. We have to continue to make sure we get the best and the brightest faculty. Father Peter mentioned the fact that we do have a lot of our faculty retiring. And for the business school, I think the business school is probably in the worst shape in terms of what they have to face in the marketplace. Because as our faculty retire, we've got a couple things working against us. We've got some of our faculty that were more historically rooted in our teaching environment, where it was mostly around teaching a pretty heavy class load, not doing a lot of the research and the connections to their colleagues in the industry. And so the new breed of faculty come in and have a lower teaching load because you have to give them time to do all that other work. That really is time consuming. And so as a result, we're losing faculty that were teaching more classes for higher priced faculty that are going to teach less, right? So we also find too, as you can imagine, the business school faculty are the highest compensated in terms of the academic world as well, because we are competing with the business world. So somebody in finance has an option. They could go to Wall Street, they could become an academician, whatever it might be. So for us, it's going to be a real challenge to continue to have the resources we need to attract and retain the best faculty possible. Identifying emerging business opportunities. That's very, very important for us. We've been working that quite heavily on our grad program side. We have redesigned our Master of Science and Finance program, our Master of Accountancy program. So we have a number of programs that we have niched in some ways that are kind of on our foundation of our MBA programs. We've got a fast-track MBA, we've got a flexible MBA, we've got a very strong executive MBA program. So under the direction of Bob Bonner, our Associate Dean, he has really worked aggressively on assuring that our grad programs, our executive programs, are competing well in the marketplace, a very competitive marketplace, frankly, and that we keep our eye on emerging business opportunities as well. Our reputation, our stature is something we need to continue to push on to get this international recognition we're talking about. And consistent with the university, and I hate to always bring this up, but it's important. You heard it in the video, you heard it from Father Peter. We have to get the resources to do it. The issue about competing, when I was at Tuck, our budget was driven more by endowment than it was by tuition dollars. Tuition dollars only covered 47% of our budget. Here at Villanova, our tuition covers about 92% of our budget. So now that also was kind of a double-edged sword for those schools when they went through the rough time here the last couple of years, because as their endowment dropped, they were dependent on that to drive a lot of programmatic things and a lot of faculty salaries and so forth. So they might have gone a little too aggressively on that. The answer obviously is somewhere in between, with some conservative management of your endowment so that you're sure that it's there so you can continue to do what you need to do. But as we grow our endowment, the hope would be that we're able to make those investments back into some of the strategic priorities that we have for this school. I want to mention to you, just to kind of lay the foundation for some of our discussion, within this context of where we're at as a business school in the industry, within this context of our new strategic plan, what are some of the challenges, opportunities, and issues? I'm not going to solve these. I want you to solve these for me if you could. So I'll throw them out there. They're not necessarily going to be a surprise. Many of you have heard some of these things. But I do want to highlight them in terms of where we're at. The number one. Far and away the number one. My work talking to those other deans convinced me that this is 75% of the game. So we've got to make sure that we're continuing to do this. The issue that we confront not only with retiring faculty is where we're at statistically. So what we did at the bottom, you can see a list of 6 schools: Boston College, Fairfield, Fordham, Georgetown, Notre Dame, and Marquette. We're able to, in our industry, do some salary benchmarking. We all have to report this salary into our accreditation association, and if you do as such, they will, and you give them 6 other schools, they won't tell you specifically each school, but combine the averages, that the combined averages of those schools is X, and this is where you're at. Our full professor, so a professor that's been here a while and has achieved the highest stature that you can as a faculty member, we're lagging that set of 6 schools and our salaries by 34% on average. At the associate professor level, which is a tenured professor, usually a little bit more junior in their career, we're behind now by 27.8%. Assistant professor, it's even worse at 38.6%, and the assistant professor are the people that you're bringing in. So, how does this translate into the market, right? If right now we need to go out for a newly minted PhD finance professor, the market right now is providing those folks, man, probably haven't looked, if I haven't looked at it in the last 60 days, it's changed dramatically, no doubt. But where we might go out into the market with an offer of $140,000 or $150,000, other schools are paying upwards of $200,000. And what's happening is that this is all kind of coming from the top, right? So the Ivy League schools, I could tell you, when I was at Tuck, and this was back in 2005, our budget for a finance professor, all in, salary, benefits, administrative support, was $350,000. So they competed quite aggressively, and then it just kind of pushes down. So this tier of schools, which I would not put in the same category as, say, the top 10 list that you saw earlier. So now obviously the stakes have been raised for them, and so we're at that same point. So we're not just trying to stay steady with where we've been historically. We're trying to jump up a category as well. So this is one of the top challenges that we face. An important thing for us is to continue to maintain the type of faculty and the attention to our students that we've had before. And that's an important thing, because as you change your composition and you start competing at a higher level and you attract a different type of faculty, the concern might be that they come in here and it's like, you know what, I'll teach that class, but I really have to do this research. I don't want to be bothered with that. Roll me out every so often. For us, it doesn't work. In fact, when our faculty come in here and we're looking to hire them, they actually have to teach a class, and we take a look at how they do. And we really have a big discussion around that. So when they come into Villanova, they have to be equally interested in teaching and research. So it can't just be, one or the other. And so for us, that puts us in a different position. I absolutely guarantee, because I have seen this at other schools, it is not important. All it really counts on, teaching is not important. All that counts is your research. That's how you're going to get tenure at a place. That's not going to happen here. And so for us, it's also a tough thing for us to make sure we maintain that balance. I also want to underscore that it is important to us, because I worry a little bit that people that have gone through the old system, they realize, well, geez, if they do all this, are they going to have faculty that really don't care? For us, it's important to maintain that. So that's an important challenge. How do we preserve our heritage with caring faculty and innovative teaching? Dan Dalella brought this up earlier to Father Peter, and it's so important in this day and age of rising tuition costs. If this doesn't translate into some kind of return on the investment, which translates into a strong job and good options in terms of your careers, we're going to have a real challenge on our hands. You can't very well charge somebody 50, 60, it could be, who knows, if you look at these numbers, it could be $100,000 a year if they're not going to get a job that makes sense. And so for us, this is something we have to pay close attention to. We have these discussions, we certainly have had them in our Dean's Advisory Council, the importance of helping identify opportunities for our students. When I go out and talk to recruiters, we inevitably face we've got a list of 12 schools we go to, and we're inevitably not on that list because they're kind of that marquee list. It's a marquee list mixed in wherever the CEO went to school. So you've got that list of places, schools that they happen to recruit at. So we're always pushing ourselves up against it. We're trying to bootstrap ourselves into opportunities, and we're fortunate, again, that's where our alumni network gives us a clear point of differentiation, because we could go into a company and start working with those alums that are very helpful in terms of getting us the opportunities. That's something that's a challenge for us as we move ahead. This going global thing. It's not just the global reputation, but how do we assure that students have a global perspective? We're very proud of where we're at. 50% of our graduating seniors have had some international experience during their time here. We certainly have made advancements in terms of in the classroom where our faculty are paying more attention to assuring that there's a global perspective. But it's very easy, I have to tell you, in American academics, to have that kind of narrow domestic view. It's kind of what you're used to teaching. It's your frame of reference. So what we have to figure out is how do we bring that global perspective into the classroom? It might be that we need to have more international faculty. It might be that we've got to send our faculty, off to various, study abroad trips themselves so that they are also prepared to provide that perspective. As a business school, we have to think, well, what are some of the big dogs doing, right? So I can tell you, Duke, they've got a very aggressive global strategy. They're looking at, Durham, North Carolina is just one of their campuses, and not just the one that drives everything, but they want to make sure that the campus that they have in Shanghai is important. India, they're getting into relationships to be in St. Petersburg. So the big schools are really working quite aggressively on that. How are we going to play within that? That's an important issue for us. Online education is, the wave of the future, right? Or maybe the wave of the past in some ways. It's something that we're all trying to figure out how to get on. We need to do this as well. We have a lot of competitive business schools, Northeastern, not that they're a direct competition, I just happen to be familiar with it because my daughter goes there, but they've really put together very strong online educational programs. Including being able to earn, an MBA, by going through that type of program. Every business school, every top dog business school is going down this path, and we need to do the same thing. We're certainly having discussions about it. They're not moving as fast as I think a number of us would like them to move, and you hit a number of walls as you're going after this thing. It's like, well, what type of technology? What does that mean? How do we assure our faculty are prepared? What kind of resources do you need? And how does that affect your reputation? We'll have these discussions on campus. Some faculty would feel, listen, you're going to lose the personalized touch. You can't do that. It doesn't make sense. Well, the market is moving there. Students that are coming in now are certainly used to technology, and in some ways it provides a pretty rich educational experience in its own way. So how does this translate into something for us? That's another challenge. The resource control, I have to keep doing the dog thing. I apologize, but my daughter foisted upon me a young puppy about 4 or 5 weeks ago. She thought buying a puppy living in New York City was a good idea. Didn't turn out to be a good idea. So Dad is the prouder owner of a young puppy. Somehow or another, and I've never had a dog before, so I have turned into obviously a dog person. So my final slide brings up the constant refrain of the resource issue. How do we compete with the big dogs? What are we going to do in terms of getting the type of endowment we need? A lot of you have seen the story around our endowment relative to others. We're at about 300 million, and you'll have other places like BC at 1.5 billion, and Notre Dame at 4 billion, and so we're competing against that. We also look at the amount that we spend per student as a business school relative to that competitive set that I had there before. Of those 6 schools, we were last in terms of how much we're spending per student in terms of when you put it all in there, the administrative costs and so forth. So it's an issue for us. In some ways, it's also quite interesting. This is probably the most effective and efficient school that I've ever seen. The ability to get things done is really astounding. I've told many of you that when I was up at Tuck, I had a staff of 110 and I had a faculty of 47. Here we have a business school faculty of about 100 and a staff of about 40. So it's completely reversed, right? So we're doing a lot with little. And again, I have to give a lot of credit. I've introduced some of our staff last night, but we have this incredible staff. And thank God the things that they're able to pull off given where we're at is really, I think, a real tribute to where we're at. So, and it's something that we have to pay attention going forward. With rising tuition, we have to make sure that people understand why we might need more resources, and that it's not just something that gets easily dismissed. So that's a perspective on where we're at as a business school. Again, I was recently reappointed, for those of you that don't know, so I'm 3 months into my 6th year, and my 2nd term as the dean here. It has been the most incredible position I have ever been in. Been great having the opportunity to get to know so many of you. It just, in Villanova, I have to say, is just a real shining star from my perspective. It's been an honor to be the dean. And I really am looking forward to continuing this. And for me, it was like, even if 5 years have gone by, I feel like we just kind of went, the first 500 feet in a mile journey, right? There's a lot to be done. We have a lot to be proud of, but there's certainly much more that we need to do. So, with that little background, what I'd like to do, if we don't mind, and I don't have any order of this, but it might be useful just to kind of inform our conversation. If I could ask each of the faculty directors of the centers, and we got about 25 minutes to lunch. I was just hoping maybe this takes 10 minutes at most overall, and then that'll open up some of the conversation. So if you don't mind just kind of standing up saying, listen, we have a real estate center here, and here's who I am, and here's a couple things happening. So since I see Sean, I'm going to start there and kind of work my way over.
I'm director of the Villanova Real Estate Center, and we started in spring of 2007. We have a student focus in our center, so we're all about trying to get our students jobs. But my advisory council, who is great, and many of them are sitting around here, and Dan and I have been focused on for the last 3 years. I guess a visual perspective, there was no real estate classes in spring of 2007. Well, there was one kind of real estate class in books that hadn't been taught. I guess we discounted, and real estate now, we have a minor now, it's the biggest minor in the business school, so we've got 88 students currently in the minor. We've got 120-something undergraduates taking real estate classes right now, and about 50, I think, this semester. Graduate students, we take real estate classes. We place 10 plus students, and I guess you guys might have heard, but it's not been a really good real estate market for the last couple of years. So we placed 10 plus students last year in full-time jobs. We had 20 plus, maybe 25 plus internships. We had a case competition last year. There's about 10 schools on campus, and got a lot of national and local recognition where we had a $40,000 budget for the case. It was completely funded externally. So our focus has been to build what we call the Villanova real estate family, which is huge, surprisingly, since we haven't had real estate. Our alumni are amazing. So that's really what our center's about. We have a research focus as well. We're trying to get some of that done, but we're really about trying to bring the alumni community and the local real estate community together with the students to build future real estate leaders. I think right now we're making great inroads, and I heard today maybe we're coming back in the market. So going forward, we're trying to position ourselves. And our alumni have been great. So I think that took like 2 minutes. So and thanks to all my advisory board for here.
Thank you. Thank you, Sean. Keep moving that way. I see Chuck.
Hi, my name is Chuck Sack. I'm the director of the Center for the Study of Church Management at Villanova. Pretty innovative program and very much in line with our academic. In the center, we do research. We've recently published books on emerging parishes, on performance assessment in the church, and on parish finance councils. And we also, of course, disseminate knowledge. We have one-day workshops on individual business topics for parishes. We have a week-long certificate program we do in the summer. We've recently invited some customized programs by some dioceses and religious orders. At the course of our program is our master's degree in church management. As Jim mentioned, online education is an online program, entirely online. We have students in our program from 6 U.S. time zones. We have fellows graduated who spend the whole time in Hong Kong taking the program. We have priests who started in the United States and after the program is transferred to Nicaragua to do the program. So we're all about helping the church with its temporal issues. We have wonderful faculty and wonderful staff, and it's an incredibly great project.
Thanks, Chuck. Oh, right over here, John Kosup.
Hello, I'm John Kosup. I'm the director of our Center for Marketing and Public Policy Research. Villanova has a 20-year history in this area. We're really a national think tank. We're tops in the country. Different marketing programs have their brand. They're tops in either retail or branding or logistics. So the international marketing. We're tops in the country in terms of marketing and public policy research. Notre Dame is our we have 2 journals in-house. The Journal of Public Policy and Marketing, which is headed by Dr. Ron Hill, and an International Journal of Advertising, headed by Professor Ray Taylor. Our mission is to serve as an honest broker between So as we look at things, it's primarily under a research mission, but also in terms of preparing our students for the 21st century marketplace. We've done several things on the curricular side, particularly, of course, entitled Understanding the Global Marketplace and Post-Bailout Economy. Got a bit of press for that, but it was basically due to the strength of our values before being able to attend to. We created a course where leaders from industry came in and taught our students in real time as the president was happening. So the day that the bill, the stimulus package was being debated in Congress, we had representatives come up to DC and lay it out for us. That's the type of things that we're doing from a curricular innovation standpoint, and as well as some of the things we have going on with research in the future. We're looking at re-regulation in the financial services industry, as I mentioned, but also how do we grow out of this environment, whether it be issues of corporate sustainability, sustainable investing and branding, as well as some of the things that are coming up. We had an interesting discussion, Frank Perry and I last night, about the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act and how things are happening in companies and how the government's cracking down on it in the global marketplace. So I look forward to the discussion. If any of you have ideas or issues that are back and would like to address, please talk to me about it. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Little competition amongst the advisory councils. Now we have to clap for. All right, let's see. Did I see Matt Libertor? Where's Matt at? Matt's over here. Right behind you there, Matt.
Hi, I'm Matt Libertor, Director of the Center for Business Analytics. It's the newest center within BSB. And our world today has changed a lot. We have a lot more data about our businesses and about our organizations. So we're all about how to better use data to drive decisions in business across the organization. So we take a very much cross-functional view of the organization. So we're looking at, as Jerry mentioned, how data now is being used within marketing, within finance, operations, and so on to drive decision making. So our interests kind of range from business intelligence, which relates to collecting data for performance and for reporting and so on, all the way through the analytics area, which gets involved with things like data mining and predictive modeling. So what we've done so far is we've begun to launch some courses in business intelligence and analytics as electives, but we've also been working on trying, I think we also brought up, we're trying to improve the overall analytic abilities of our students. So we've been working on improving the curriculum for our undergraduates in this area as well. The other side is our interest in business practice within this area. We've brought in a number of high-profile speakers, CEO of Harris, CEO of SAS Institute. We're bringing in Gordon May, who's a noted IT scholar and futurist. So what we're trying to do is to basically marshal up knowledge about best practices in analytics and how that can be best put to effect within the corporate organization. What we have is been a business roundtable group that's been meeting for the last couple of years in business practices, and now we're trying to expand that as well today in terms of going to our advisory council. And several of those individuals will be today on that group. And of course, if you have further interest or would like to participate, we'd love to have you. Thank you.
Pat Magidi.
Hi, last.
Anybody that I missed?
I just wanted to acknowledge, thank you for going in order of importance. I'm Pat Magidi.
I'm in trouble.
I'm the director of the Center for Innovation, Creativity, and Entrepreneurship. Many of you are familiar, and many of you have been involved in startup organizations, and that is the typical center that is most similar to us at other universities, are those that focus on startups. And so we all know what that is all about. We have cast a wider, sort of broader mission in terms of what we need to bring to our students. And we're tapping into some emerging trends. We know the nature of the employment contract has changed over time. And so employees it's a necessity for them to be more aligned to self-starters. There's many work-at-home type individuals. We know that there are a lot of jobs that are quantifiable or codifiable in some way, shape, or form that are being offshored or sent to other locations. And so it's becoming increasingly important that our students, whether they start a new business or work in an existing business, that they think like entrepreneurs, that they're able to distinguish themselves in terms of being innovative, creative, recognizing opportunities, and being able to take action. And so we think this is not only an important emerging trend, but a necessity for our students to distinguish themselves this way. And the center is an acknowledgement of that. So many of the things that we find ourselves being involved in have to do with cross-college initiatives. And if we think sort of broadly, the ICE Center, ICE, innovation is coming out of, in large part, coming out of our engineering school. Creativity is coming in large part out of our arts and sciences, sort of the basic sciences and obviously creative arts. And the entrepreneurship piece clearly fits with VSB. And so we have a lot of initiatives that we're discussing in our new Forum Center, and many of these involve cross-campus, cross-college initiatives, which fits very well again with our interdisciplinary strategic perspective that Father Peter talked about earlier. So I look forward to developing some of those initiatives, and I thank my advisory council for their participation today.
I know I was going to have John Stone. Yeah, you're with me, John. Jonathan had to step out to teach. So John Stoner is the chair of the Global Leadership Center. So if John could pick up on that.
Thanks. Many of you may be reminded of that quip in a presidential debate some years ago. I'm no Jonathan Doe. Jonathan did have to step out to teach, and we did say the best. I was hoping the Center for Global Leadership is intended to reinforce the last part of the Villanova School of Business vision statement. Basically, we're intent on adding to the student experience here a global perspective so that they can in fact become leaders of complex global organizations. And we do that in a variety of ways, not only in the curriculum, but as well importantly in the extracurricular experience that they have. And a lot of the focus that we have on the advisory council is in adding that extracurricular dimension, frankly, to the experience of the students, which is a resource question. It's a networking question, but it's one that the students just they eat it up. It's an amazing thing to listen to these students, and they come back and they participate in our advisory council meetings, what it means to them to have that experience and then bring that into their own education. That's what excites us. We like to refer to ourselves as the Jonathan Doe Fan Club. He is our leader in that effort, and it's really an exciting thing to do, to be able to bring that to these students. And that's what the Center for Global Leadership is intent on doing.
Thank you, John. We have two other advisory councils, too, that are part of our group here. One is our CIO advisory group. This group has been with us for a while under faculty leadership of Steve Van Riel, who couldn't be here today, but we do have some of the CIO members here as well, and they provided some advice and counsel on technology and various things around that particular area. And the other group is our accounting advisory council as well. And obviously, the world of accounting has been awfully important to us historically. We're very fortunate to have great support across all the accounting firms, Big Four and others, and they're represented here as well. So did that touch on everyone in your book there, Madonna? Okay. Oh, the Dean's Advisory Council, of course. Certainly an important group for us as well, and our chair of the Dean's Advisory Council, newly appointed chair, is Bill Basic, who is right here as well. And very pleased to have this group. We get together a couple times a year. They provide strategic guidance, advice to us on the direction of the school, and that's obviously a very important group to us as well. So you could see that kind of cutting across between centers and various programmatic issues, strategic issues. We've put together a really nice array of advisory councils. I think the thing that really kind of stood out for me, though, is you heard that is, I probably didn't have to talk. I should have just had the center directors talk, because through that, that really kind of exemplifies what we're talking about. We need faculty that are really energized in their particular areas. You can see the excitement that they have now that they've got the resources of the center, because that's what, we flow resources through the center. They're making some decisions where to make those investments across curricular changes and across research, and investments in other faculty, frankly, to do research on their behalf. The public policy was a great example of ways that we're able to make that connection between public policy and the academic side. So that group of faculty that just spoke right now, I think really kind of captured the spirit of what we need. We need to continue that type of energy We need to continue to attract that type of faculty talent here, and we need to continue to go down these paths, some which might work and some that might not, that energize the school in a number of other ways, be it global, entrepreneurship, analytics, and so forth. So that's, hopefully provides a pretty good picture of what this is all about. Obviously, your advice and counsel on what we do in those centers and what we do in a larger way for the strategic direction of the school is enormously valuable to us. With that, I'm going to open it up for questions, comments, advice. Just turn it over to you for the next 10 or 15 minutes for your reactions. All right. Father.
Jim, I don't have an answer to this question.
I hope I do.
I posed it as an issue. If you look around Catholic higher education, and Villanova would be a good example, there's been a feminization. I bet, I don't know, but I bet the undergraduate enrollment at Villanova is over 55% female. As surely the case at places like Loyola, Chicago, which is higher, Georgetown, Boston College, there's a feminization. Now, we all celebrate the equality of men and women. Men and women are equal, but they're not identical. And there are different learning styles, there are different leadership styles. The Anne Mulcahy's got there accidentally, the Sheila Bears got there accidentally. The question is there any pedagogy? Is there something that Villanova Business School ought to be doing to educate women for leadership that would be different from what's been doing now and is going on very well?
Sounds like we have a new center, the Center for... it's a great observation. Again, I'm probably like you. I don't have an answer that, hey, this is, in terms of here's what we're doing. I can tell you at the business school, the numbers are different. It's 75% male, 25% female. At the university, you're right, it's greater than 50%. I think it's more like 51, 52% in terms of the mix. But we do have some initiatives. We have a Women's in Business a group of student organization on campus. I know they do an annual event, and there is focus on that. I think as they go through the various the things that we provide through the Clay Center in terms of professional programs and kind of more, I would say, more on the advice, professional development, nurturing side, as opposed to a different approach academically, frankly. So we don't have any, I would say, pedagogical approaches in place that necessarily play to that. Is it a good opportunity? It could well be. You're right. There are differences, and it's something that you need to recognize, and you need to help develop students so that they're successful. But I don't have any strong answer in terms of what we are currently doing. So. Father Byron, by the way, has been president with 3 institutions, Father, and so he has obviously studied this issue, has written a number of books, including one he provided last night to us on leadership. It's in the back, you're signing it today?
I'll tell you, if I can get the mic, I'll tell you an anecdote that I was president of the University of Scranton back in the 70s. I was at the University of Scranton from 1975 to 82. They had a department of business and economics in the college, and I separated it off into an independent business school and became a school of management. And then there were a lot of females enrolling in the school of management, and they decided that they would kind of form a club, and they had a special dinner one night, and they invited the highest level female executive from CBS to come up to be the speaker. And during the dinner, she made several references to going to work with her little child in the Black Rock, they call it in New York, where CBS is. And the elevator starter would have comments with the kids and all that. And she also mentioned several times that she would really like to run one of the so-called O&Os, owned and operated by the network. She would really like to do that. And she also mentioned that her husband was a lawyer with an established firm in New York. One of the kids asked the question, what would you do if you ran the O&O in Los Angeles, whatever the CBS property in Los Angeles is? You got that, and your husband didn't want to go. She said immediately, I'd get a divorce. Now you can imagine the reaction of these kids to that question. But that's one of the issues that now services.
Yeah.
And And when I taught at Georgetown in the business school, I would have each student do an individual mission statement. I said, you know, we look at the Johnson & Johnson Cradle, we look at mission statements for companies. Write one for yourself. You're a corpus. Think of yourself as a corporation. Write your own mission statement. And I said, I won't read it until after the grades are in, you know. And invariably, the female students, and there were a lot of them, always had, they were wrestling with the problem of the balance of work and family.
Sure.
And somehow or other, this gets back to my original question.
Yeah.
We, all of us in higher education, we got to address that issue while it's still with us.
Good point. Thank you, Father. Other comments, questions, advice? All right, let's hear and then over there, okay?
Jim, I was wondering, we heard a lot about the university and the university challenges, and a lot of it revolves around long-term fundraising. Then you talked about the specific issues of business school, and one of those is the faculty salary issue. Is that issue politicized at the university? Do you solicit donations for the business school versus the annual fund versus the new capital campaign versus probably athletic programs that have their own fundraising? And how does, realizing that those probably all reach the same alumni community in one form or the other, how does that, looking for what's the solution to the faculty salary issue?
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's a great question, and certainly something in the development side of what we need to do, you're always kind of considering, right? Really, a lot of it really does boil down to interest of individual donors. So I'm in the same position. Jay Wright was very polite yesterday not to ask for money for the basketball program, right? Because he was with our audience. So the best I think all we're able to do is to provide to our alums, to provide to our potential donors the set of issues and what our challenges are. And in so many ways, I think you'll find something's going to hit. You might have an interest in this particular area. Somebody might be interested in public policy or the analytics or the innovation. So for us, it's really a matter of, as a dean, of representing the broad interest of what we need at the business school, recognizing that there's broad interest across the entire university, right? Father Peter would like, $50 million for that performance center. I would like the business school name for $50 million. So, you have to. All you could do is throw out what the needs are and how that money is going to be used, and assure people that it's going to be used in a positive, productive manner, right? So it's we're not necessarily kind of throwing money into a pot and then just trying to make our case. We tend to do that around the budgeting and strategic priority process. So this strategy process that we're going through, each of us as deans working with the Vice President of Academic Affairs, we sat together on a weekly basis over the last couple of months, figuring out how as a combined group on the academic side, what are our priorities? How do we make our case? And you hope that you get some out of the money that's going to go toward the strategic imperative side, through the budgeting process and through development and fundraising. So I'm not sure if I'm answering the question, but I think, again, it's a matter of us all making our case, hoping that it all kind of hangs together as a university. I mean, obviously, we do that in an intentional way. I think our needs are very much aligned with the needs of the university, and you hope that you've got a pretty good representative group of donors and alums that are going to direct money that's consistent with their, areas that they want to support, and they align with our needs as well. So does that answer it? I'm not sure if I've understood it clearly, because you're still looking like I didn't go there, but okay. All right. Other comments? Oh, wait, we had one over here, I'm sorry.
I'll make it quick so I know everybody's trying to get to lunch here. But quick question as it relates to social media and the curriculum. Is there any attention being paid to social media on the undergraduate level or graduate level? In particular, any courses or any topics, both on an individual level about personal web presence and also from a business's web presence? If there's been any attention to that?
You have an answer, don't you? All right, I want to introduce, and I meant to do this after Pat talked, Jim Klingler has really been the face of our entrepreneurship here at Villanova and has done a great job over the years. I can see him jumping out of his seat to answer that question, which is great for us. So I'm just going to introduce Jim Klingler. Jim?
Thanks, Jim. Yes, we're very cognizant of it. In fact, yesterday we had a very successful entrepreneur, Dean Kassar, in my class, and he was talking about the Facebook pages, and actually he's created a business that is booming and is doing that. I get students coming in weekly with new apps for this. In fact, we have been funding through the Ice Center the development of a course between engineering, so we have an expert in telephone technology, computer science, where we have a faculty member who has received a grant from Apple to develop applications for the iPhone and the iPod, and one of our expert faculty members in IT in business. It's hard to keep up fast enough. The students are in front of us. The students are really in front of us. But the notion of cleaning up their Facebook page, clean up, mining LinkedIn, all these sorts of things are becoming, I think, an important part of just about every class certainly that I'm involved in. And every one of us is aware of it. In fact, many of us compete with Facebook every day in class.
Thanks, Jim. Thank you, Jim. All right, we're going to break for lunch. We're going to have about an hour here. You're going to have, there must be a bunch of students behind those doors. They're going to come in and join us and make sure we have a student at each table. And we're going to have 2 or 3 of our students just provide at an appropriate time a little bit about what they're doing and some of the things that they're learning. So again, I want to thank you for your time this morning and look forward to continuing the conversation.